You're listening to the Lost Geographer Podcast, and this is episode 16, The Introduction to the Barriers of Literacy.
In our modern globalized society, understanding geography and culture is crucial if you want to succeed in life. Unfortunately, many people are still unaware of the world around them, which is fueled by media that are focused only on profits, clicks, and promoting agendas rather than providing accurate information. Here at the Lost Geographer, we aim to promote geographic and cultural literacy through education and travel by bypassing the media. We have guests who talk about their own countries from a native perspective, travellers telling their stories in lessons, and related topics that will aid you on your journey towards geographic and cultural literacy. Get the raw, candid truth about the world we live in and understand your place in it. Because at the end of the day, it's your world. Own it.
Hey everybody, so while this podcast and site do increase your geographic and cultural literacy, the best way to attain literacy is through travel. Now, I understand that many people think traveling is expensive and stressful, and understandably so. However, it doesn't have to be this way. Traveling can be cheap and relatively stress-free if you know the right places to look for flights and already have an understanding of common travel mistakes. If you want to learn how, check out The Ultimate Guide to Smart Budget Traveling. It's a video course that will teach you how to save hundreds on your next vacation and thousands throughout your life by showing you how to make different rewards programs work for you and introduce you to sites that have prices you could have only dreamed of. I will show you how I've done things such as book transatlantic and transcontinental flights in the US for less than $10, and how I don't pay ATM fees anywhere in the world and withdraw money according to the exact exchange rate and not get ripped off. Want to learn more? Check out literacy.thelostgeographer.net for more information, and for a limited time only, I have taken off 67% of the course's original price to provide it to you for just $19 using the code SUMMERTRAVEL, all one word. Consider it an investment to learn how to invest in experiences to become geographically and culturally literate. Again, you can find it at literacy.thelostgeographer.net.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the Lost Geographer Podcast, where our goal is to promote geographic and cultural literacy. It's your world. Own it. I'm your host, Rohit Amritar, founder of The Lost Geographer. You can find us at www.thelostgeographer.net, and this is episode 16, and this is going to be a quick one. This is going to be a quick episode introducing our new upcoming subseries within this podcast called Barriers to Literacy. So before we get into this podcast, I want to apologize real quick if the audio doesn't sound as good as it did in the past. I was all set up to record. I had my mic, I had my stand and everything, but I didn't have the cord connecting the mic to my laptop because I was just moving. And so I unfortunately did not plan for that, and I am stuck using the headphones on my microphone. But don't worry, I'll have a cable before the next episode. So aside from that, let's move on. So far on this podcast, you've heard people talk about their country from their point of view, so you basically get the raw and unfiltered information about a country that isn't subject to media bias, which is the root of basically all problems that are wrong in this world right now, along with others, and we will talk about those in this upcoming mini-series. You've also been hearing from travelers about travel and how it has affected them personally. All the information so far that is on this podcast has been created with the intent to inform you, in order to make you more geographically and culturally literate. However, we also need to look at the things that cause illiteracy and whose proliferation poses a barrier to the kind of literacy that we need in this world. And like I said before, these barriers include things such as the media. Other barriers are victim mentalities, political correctness, etc. And so the way that this sub-series will be set up is that every few episodes in this podcast, I will discuss a barrier to literacy, and I will do so in detail. So, for example, I haven't planned it yet, but maybe the next one will be me talking about the media, and then one after that, maybe I'll talk about political correctness, and I'll talk about victim mentalities, external identification, and how all these things pose as barriers to literacy and basically keep us divided in this world. So the purpose of this sub-series, the reason why I'm doing this, it's to bring to light these issues that many people are either too afraid to address or are unaware of its effect on people. And they're afraid to address it because it might offend people, it might hurt people, it might make people uncomfortable. But the fact of the matter is that if we want any progress in any area of our life, and as a society and as individuals, we need to step outside of our comfort zones and do the uncomfortable. So what I mean by that is, in this context, we need to have the uncomfortable conversations so that we can achieve social progress. And so this is how many of the modern concepts were developed. It was developed through organized debate, debating the uncomfortable, debating the things that people didn't want to talk about, debating the things that needed to be addressed so that people could move forward in this world and we can become enlightened. So for example, Plato, Socrates, Aristotle, that's what they all engaged in when they were coming up with the democratic principles that govern most of the developed world right now. And those have obviously been very influential. Now think about it, if they were too afraid to discuss these things, we would most likely all still be living under tyranny, or the progress of a democratic society would have been hindered significantly. And this social progress won't be achieved by things such as safe zones, which is a new thing apparently, which are around because people are just too hurt by words. To me, what a safe zone is, and what safe zones originally mean, is that it's a safe space for people who have problems to come and talk about their problems. Because if we keep all our emotions just pent up within us, it's going to burst at some point. So we need to talk to people. We need to get advice. And we need to go to a place where people won't judge us for what we say, and will instead give us advice. So an example would be Alcoholics Anonymous. That's a safe zone. Not a place where I literally can't say anything because I'm going to offend someone if I say something. So that's what a safe zone actually is, just as a quick side note. And the safe zone that others are talking about nowadays at university campuses and things of that sort, which are just places where you can't say certain words, you can't talk about certain topics. It's ludicrous because it's hindering social progress. And I understand that these people think that because we have these safe zones and people can't say offensive things that it's going to make people get along better. It's not. Because then people have this resentment inside of them that they can't say certain things in front of certain people. And if we just let everything out in the open, if we let people talk about how they actually feel, we can actually analyze how they feel and bring it all together and go forward with it. So getting off that tangent real quick, you're probably wondering, okay, who are you to talk about this? I mean, I understand that you're really interested in cultures, you're really interested in geography, but who are you to talk about such social issues? So, I mean, other than the fact that I'm passionate about this, I've started this whole movement and doing this podcast in order to get people to understand each other better. I'll just give you several more reasons establishing my credentials in this arena. Firstly, I've participated in some of these behaviors that act as barriers to literacy. I've behaved like a victim before in my life. I have been politically correct. I have identified externally. I later realized the issues with the sorts of behaviors that I just mentioned and others, and changed my ways, and have as a result experienced enhanced relationships with people in all areas of my life, which is essentially the goal of your journey toward geographic and cultural literacy. Because at the end of the day, the two things that matter boil down to the work you do and the relationships that you have with people, and both of them kind of intertwine. So it's really important to connect with people, whether it's for your social life, whether it's for your business life, whether it's just for your personal growth. For all of those, we all know relationships are everything in terms of getting ahead in life. And the world is so globalized. More people are going to come from different backgrounds and won't be too pleased if you act ignorantly toward them, and you will lose a potential connection right there. So another reason why I feel that I'm qualified to talk about this is that I'm writing a book about geographic and cultural literacy. So everything that I talk about on the website and on this podcast, I'm compiling it along with some outside research into a book, which I can't tell you when it's going to come out right now because I just want to make sure everything is in it and perfect before I announce a release date. But regardless, I've been writing this book about geographic and cultural literacy, why it's important, and how to go about becoming geographically and culturally literate. In the process of writing this book, I've done plenty of research on psychology and understanding human behaviors and the way they behave in certain situations. And this research mostly comes from academic papers and theories derived by famous psychologists. Now, as you've probably seen so far in this episode, I'm going to give my point of view in a lot of these things. So I feel that it's necessary for me to give a little disclaimer about the sub-series. I will address issues that are considered controversial in today's world. I will talk about them in a candid, direct, and straightforward way that may offend some people. Obviously, I don't mean to offend anybody. My goal is not to offend anybody. I won't get anything out of offending anybody. It's not going to do anything for me. But I just want to bring light to certain issues that need to be discussed in order to help us move forward in resolving the problems that plague today's world. And I mean plague. I mean, we see how the world has become. I know some people will be offended because I just can't help it. I can't help the way people react. Some people are more sensitive than others, and they have different points of views that I might not be able to understand, which is fine. But like I said, I obviously can't control your reaction because feelings are subjective. And by the way, this is extremely important in order to become more literate. And we'll talk about that later when it comes to political correctness and things of that sort. But because I can't control your reaction, I can't be bothered to try and appease everybody. That would just be ridiculous. That would mean, well, I might as well say nothing at all, which is the first problem with political correctness. But again, for another episode. So hopefully now you get an idea of where I'm going with this mini sub-series of this podcast. These are topics that need to be addressed. I'm going to try and do so in an extremely objective way, which is difficult because these are inherently subjective topics. But I will try and bring it out in the way that I feel is most beneficial to everybody, in a sense that it shows you how eliminating this behavior will benefit you and the people around you in the long run. And while there are a lot of these movements going around asking for solidarity and peace and all that, which are great, equality movements and things of that nature, nothing wrong with those. Obviously, I'm all for that. However, I disagree with the methods that they're using, and they don't see that their methods aren't working. People are becoming more disgusted with the way they're doing things. But they still continue to use the same method. It's that, I forget who it was, Benjamin Franklin, I think it was, says something like, insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. These people are literally insane because they are doing the same thing over and over again. It's obviously not working, but they think if they just do more of it, then it's going to work. And I want to address that. I want to help steer these kinds of groups and movements in the right direction instead of letting them bring us back as a society and as a world. So that's all I have for this episode. It was just a quick introduction to what you can expect in the sub-series. Obviously, I still have country episodes and travelers come in and talk. These will just be littered in between those. Expect it every 3 or 4 episodes. Just expect a new episode on a barrier to literacy. So there's the quick introduction, and tune in next week for another episode of the Lost Geographer Podcast. Until next time, it's your world, own it.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Lost Geographer Podcast. Remember to tune in next week for another episode to aid you on your journey towards geographic and cultural literacy. In order to help spread the word, please rate, review, subscribe, and share the podcast so that we can help create a new wave of understanding in our world. Remember, it's your world. Own it.